Hey everyone, welcome back into DomTime. Stop and frisk is an issue that I think is so heated because it is life and death. It involves police, it involves attention with the constitutional rights. It involves just everyday life and where you live and your viewpoint on it, and that's why it's such a hot button. Two great guests tonight. Jonathan Goldstein, who's a firearms attorney out in Montgomery County, and criminal defense attorney and municipal prosecutor Rick D. Michelle. Jonathan, the numbers are on your side, at least. You haven't made that argument tonight that I thought maybe one of you would make, that there's a lot of stops and very few stops in New York where they actually do find a weapon. Right. I'm not sure about other contraband or not. That may add to it. Do you feel that's an indicator of anything?
Yeah, I mean, we also know in Philadelphia, I have talked to some of the folks that are involved in this Philadelphia case, and they're at least the police are not recording the seizure of very many weapons. Now, they're certainly probably picking up drugs. They're certainly getting people who have outstanding warrants. But I think just as a police effectiveness tool, there may be better ways to use these police resources than stopping every random person.
And Dom, keep in mind, too, with regard to the frisk part, the stop and frisk, the frisk element to that is there for officer safety. You know, they're allowed just to do an outside pat down and because they know what a gun feels like when you pat it down. You know, you would hope at least that not everybody that they stopped and talked to was carrying an illegal weapon. So I'm not so sure at the end of the day, you know, because I think every officer is going to make the pat down when they make the stop to make sure that they're protecting themselves and their their families, that they're going to do that, that's necessarily an effective tool to say, well, you know, fine, they're not carrying weapons. I think if anybody who makes a stop is going to make the pat down, and that's where you're, you know. Okay.
If I said to you, the people I had on from New York make a case which is compelling to me. One of the reasons the numbers are so low is people are not carrying weapons. They have found, at least anecdotal evidence, not as many people are carrying weapons because they have more of a fear of being stopped. Maybe they're hiding them in other places to go. You're not seeing as much violence when these people are in a dispute, somebody bumps into something, you know what I mean?
Sure.
These spur of the moment things that you probably have seen. There's a cooling off, and there's more difficulty of having access to a gun to shoot somebody.
Well, that's certainly true. I mean, those people that are involved in organized crime, be it drug trade or whatever else, I mean, because they come into contact with the police as often as they do, given that what they're doing, many times they will store a handgun on a wheel well or outside somewhere. And the advantage to that is, at least for the law enforcement is, or at least for if there was a conflict, they don't have ready access of that gun on their person. They've got to go somewhere to get it. So in terms of that may be a good thing in terms of making sure, because obviously if an argument breaks out and someone reaches for a gun that they don't have, they're not going to be able to shoot it.
And Jonathan, one other thing with New York too, the front end is the stop, question, frisk. The back end is the mandatory nature of this. If you're caught with an illegal weapon within New York City, something else I do support, that there's no doubt about it, that's it, it's mandatory. I think that's been helpful.
Yeah, look, illegal weapons are a serious problem, and treating it as a serious problem is the right way to go. The question is, you know, what kind of world do you want to live in? And I think that, you know, I don't necessarily want to live in a world, given how tilted the playing field is in favor of the police and police power, whether I want to live in a world where stopping and frisking regularly is something that I would be subject to, my friends and neighbors would be subject to, or my children would be subject to.
Parting on this too, what do you think happens, Rick, with New York now constitutionally? You think this judge's ruling has a lot of sway? The political climate in New York, the next mayor of New York is not going to do the same thing that Bloomberg and Giuliani have done.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it a slightly different twist. You know, there's 3 class action lawsuits now that have been filed on behalf of these people, and I think in part, Mayor Bloomberg is taking the position he is, not just for the quote safety of New York City, but also because there's going to be potentially with this ruling could be substantial financial liability for the city
and a consent decree. I mean, they're going to come under somebody else's management. They're not going to be free to manage this.
A tough question for you guys. I mean, that's what you're here for. Suppose from 400 we go to 800 over the next year and a half or 2 years of homicides in New York. Would you be okay with that if we're protecting search and seizure, the Fourth Amendment?
So, Dom, I do not sit here today in favor of a rise in homicide. I want to be very clear on that, right? But I am in favor of liberty, and I think that there have got to be other ways, constitutionally friendly ways, to keep those murder numbers down. It's a hard job, but the police get paid decent money to do that hard job.
Goodness, you got to come back for a few showing that. You agree with that? They get decent money. It's a hard job.
I think it's a very hard job, and
They don't
risk
get
their
paid
life,
decent
but I
money.
don't know that they get paid
decent
what
money.
they're worth.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for joining us. And Rick, thanks for the maiden voyage here on DomTime. Hey, coming up, what Asian country, and this is a shocker that I saw today, wants to ban homework for grade school kids? They don't want these kids doing homework. I'll tell you who that is and what we should not learn from this country straight ahead on DomTime. Hey, what is the Asian country that today indicated that they don't want their kids doing written homework, take-home homework in grade school? The answer, not South Korea, that would be really shocking, but China. And when I think of China, I think of intensity, I think of kids learning, I think of the struggle we're in with China. Amazes me, and the bottom line is this: there are a lot of school districts right here in our own area that think that we give too much homework. Homework ought to be practiced. It ought to be calibrated to match what the teacher's teaching and give kids a chance to practice with parents. It shouldn't be just busy work. But getting rid of homework, are you nuts? That makes no sense. Have your kids do their homework tonight, right after DomTime. I'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. here on DomTime.